Thanks, Rob, for letting me join you here at Mr Barval Fine Wines in Margaret River. It's great to see you again. First of all, Rob, maybe if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and the Mr Barval Fine Wines.
Yeah, I think the best way of probably describing it is where the name of Mr Barval came from. I'm not Mr Barval, I'm Rob Gheradi. I'm an Australian, born in Fremantle, but I come from Italian family. All my grandparents emigrated from Italy, all four grandparents. So I grew up in a very strong Italian upbringing in Frio, and that involved also the food and wine side of Italian life. So that's really what got me into wine, I guess, starting off not from a wine-making family, but just wine being a part of life. And the name of Mr Barval stands for the areas of the world that got me into wine and taught me about wine as well. And the family side does come into it as well. So the MR of Mr Barval stands for Margaret River, which is obviously where we're making our wines now. It's where I studied at university, and it's where I have the grounding of my first 10 years working in the wine industry. I worked for two of the leading premium producers of not just Margaret River, but of Australia down here, sort of 5 years with one and 4.5 years with another. Got a really good grounding in fine wine making in Margaret River, which I'm using now, making my own wines as well. So Margaret River, obviously MR is pretty important. BAR stands for Barolo, and this gets really heavily into, I guess, my philosophical view on making wine and a lot of the techniques I use, because Barolo is Italy's probably most collected and sought after fine wine. It's up in the northwest, if your viewers aren't aware, near Turin, so near the French border, really tiny area. And they are very expensive wines, but they're also very, very good wines. And it's an area of Italy that I did my first overseas vintage post-university. And one thing led to another. I loved it so much, and the people I was working for enjoyed my work. And I ended up moving there and living there permanently with my wife and kids. And the way they made their wines, and it's not Barolo winemaking or even Italian winemaking, it's just old world traditional winemaking. It really resonated with me, and how they can get their wines to speak about, the land that they came from, the season that they came from. So the real terroir-driven wines and the techniques they use to make them, which are quite natural, and that really resonated with me as well. Fine wine, but done with a lot of attention to detail and quite naturally. And we use those techniques here, so we incorporated BAR as part of the name. And then the VAL stands for Valtellina, and this comes back to where we started talking about family and my upbringing. Valtellina is the area where my grandparents emigrated from, and not many people have heard of it. It's a tiny little area up the very north of Italy, above Lake Como. So all four grandparents came from there to Australia in the first half of the 1900s. And that's what, it gave me my first step into wine, because we made our own family wine. But down here now, what we're doing is something a little different to that. It's not quite the rough and ready family wine, but it's kind of bringing, I think, what we're really trying to show is fine wines, but also accessible wines, in terms of they're not that accessible because they do sell out very fast, but wines that are seen as good quality-wise, stylistic-wise, structure-wise. It's all the great wines of Margaret River, the more established names, but also something that just for your everyday drinker, something because of how good we make them, the quality of the fruit, the quality of Margaret River as well. They're such accessible wines to drink as well.
That's great, Rob. So maybe talk a little bit about the fact that you're both the owner, but you're also the viticulturalist and the winemaker. Yep. So you've got quite a few hats on there.
We sure do, and our whole team does. We have a very small team. It started off as just me for our first couple of years of production, and then my wife helping out, and then a worker. And now we have a couple of workers, but it's a team of 4 of us that does all the work. And yeah, I am the brains trust behind thinking up the brand, the winemaker. Obviously, I'm the one who studied. I'm the one who did the work overseas and here, so sort of the one who makes the calls on the wines. But I think it's important to recognise as well, I haven't just been a winemaker in my life. I've spent many years working outside in the vines as well, and I'm just a believer that gives me a more balanced view of the industry, and it allows me to be a better winemaker because I'm not just making calls judging on the fruit that turns up at a winery that comes off a truck. I actually know how to grow grapes, prune vines, and do the things, not so much big interventions, but being able to work with vines, different blocks in different ways to get the most out of them. So I'm certainly using a lot of that viticultural grounding knowledge and experience when making a lot of winemaking decisions, for sure, and also really helps me in identifying the great spots to be able to make wine from as well, because like all fine wine regions in the world, Margaret River is fantastic, but it's not a sea of perfect vineyards out there. There's the good, the very good, the exceptional, and there's also a lot of mediocre and average stuff out there as well. So being able to have a really strong viticultural background really helps me not only to grow good grapes, but also to work out where to access those grapes in the first place.
I think you've got quite an interesting range of wines. Maybe if you want to just tell us a little bit about some of the wines that you've got there, and they're not all your typical wines that you'd find everywhere.
I mean, our focus here for Margaret River, I am a younger generation, next generation winemaker, but we're not trying to reinvent the wheel or do anything new here. We are trying to establish ourselves as a quality Margaret River producer, and what Margaret River does best is Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay, and that's the companies that I work for. They're two very famous Cabernet and Chardonnay producing companies down here, wineries, some of the first down here, and I wanted to be able to use the knowledge that I had, and also the grapes that grow best down here to make those wines. So we do a Chardonnay, and we do a Cabernet blend and a reserve, a pure Cabernet Sauvignon wine as well, and they really are the focus of so much of our effort, and also expense as well, because there is a spare no expense philosophy when it comes particularly to those three wines. They're not cheap wines to make. They need good oak, they need a lot of attention in the vineyard and all of these things, and they need time, all of which add up to being pricier wines. But having our own wine brand, we can also do what we want to do really as well. If we can find some grapes, if we can grow certain things, we can make what we want. And so I've been able to really indulge my passion and also my story in wine by making some other wines that aren't typical for Margaret River or Australia for that matter, but which mean a lot to me and I have a real strong connection with. So we have our Nebbiolo, which Nebbiolo is the grape that goes into this famous Barolo wine. Barolo is made from Nebbiolo grapes. And this area is where I was working in Italy, and I'm an unashamed Nebbiolo addict. And so we do make a Nebbiolo, which has proven very popular for our consumers. And it's a nice wine, more importantly for me as the producer of it. We do a Rhone white blend as well, a Viognier-Marsanne blend, barrel fermented, which is quite unique as far as I'm aware at the moment. 2021, we're the only producers of that blend in Western Australia, and there's only a handful in Australia as well. I think it's a blend that works well with our climate here, the Rhone varieties. They're quite tolerant of heat, wind, some of the harsh conditions which Australia dishes up. It's a good counterpoint, being so aromatic and textural, so quite a different wine to Chardonnay. And also it's not a Sem Sauv Blanc or a Sauv Blanc Semillon or anything like that, which there's so many of in the market. So as a small producer, it is a nice bit of uniqueness for us. And then maybe the other one worth mentioning is our Rosé, because it's a very popular one for us. It sells out almost before it's released. It's a dry rosé, it's a barrel fermented rosé, it's 100% made from red grapes rosé as well, all things which put it into quite a unique category of rosé in Australia. We're not trying to make something fruity, lolly water candy kind of stuff. It's quite I don't want to say serious rosé, because rosé is not a serious wine. It should be light and fresh and enjoyable. It's a summer wine, but it is very dry. It is super lean and mineral and refreshing. And where rosé, this again goes back to my philosophy on wine, where rosé was invented in the hot areas of southern Europe and southern France. It's a hot climate, but they're wine drinkers and they had to drink wine. So they made something like super refreshing, and that's what we're trying to deliver in this wine as well, something a little different to maybe the wider rosé market out there.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think your rosé is from Shiraz?
Shiraz, yes, 100% Shiraz.
Why did you pick Shiraz?
I pick Shiraz because I don't believe, there's a couple of reasons, maybe good to start with some of the reasons why I didn't choose other varieties. Cabernet Sauvignon, for one, I don't overly enjoy personally Cabernet Rosés. Some of the flavour and aroma characteristics in Cabernet, particularly the methoxypyrazines, which are the vegetal notes, which are really an important part of Cabernet, the DNA of a good Cabernet, but I don't think that tastes so good in a rosé. I like the fact that the Shiraz skins, they don't give off, when we pick it's a little bit underripe, because we want that really low alcohol, so low sugar level in the grape and high natural acidity. The skins at that point don't give off a lot of tannins, so that's really nice as well. It just gives just that right, when it's just underripe, it's got just the right little berry note going through it. Like for mine, I think it's like a real raspberry note. In a warm year, you get nice ripe raspberry. In a cooler to mild year, you get sort of that raspberry sherbet, sort of slightly sour raspberry kind of note. But so it works really well with it. Merlot, a little bit too broad on the palate, I think, for a rosé style like we're trying to make. So we really enjoyed the Shiraz. It kind of also came about, we weren't making rosé for our first couple of years, but we found a beautiful block owned by a little private landowner. He just had a wonderful little block of Cabernet, which we wanted to take over. He wasn't using the grapes, and we run that whole little block, and he wouldn't let us take just the 10 Cabernet rows. There was 8 Shiraz rows as well. So I was trying to think of what we could do with it, because we really wanted this wonderful Cabernet, and the Rosé was a great home for those grapes as well. So it worked really well. It gives us access to more great Cabernet by making a really nice Rosé.
And no, that's great. And the Chardonnay, I think, is unfiltered, isn't it?
All of our wines are completely unfined and unfiltered. So with all of our wines, and this is something going back to in Australian winemaking these days, it's so often talked about, or you hear it a lot, things like wild fermented, unfined, unfiltered wines, and they are very much more the next gen, the younger generation winemakers really going down this path. And I think that's a good thing, but people often get surprised when I say this about our wines. I think this one shows it well. I'm not sure if you can see it well in that light, but this is an unfined, unfiltered rosé. It's crystal clear. There's no trickery being done there. It's just really careful winemaking, and we can achieve something that has none of these things that many consumers are expecting now in these unfined, unfiltered, wild fermented wines. Our wines are clean, our wines are bright, they're fresh, they show defined fruit characteristics, and stylistically our Cabernet, our Chardonnay, our Rosé, they fit really well in the styles that they're meant to be. They're not trying to be very left field wines. And we do that across the board, from our top reserve Cabernet down to our base entry level Rosé and simple Vino Rosso. It's hand-picked everything, it's wild fermented everything, it's unfined, unfiltered, unadjusted. The only thing we put in our wines is a little bit of sulphur. There's nothing else goes into them at all.
Now, the Chardonnay and the unfiltered part of this is, the last time I had one of the bottles of Chardonnay, I did find that there was some sediment at the bottom of that. So, we were drinking the wine from the bottle, and, but then as we moved down the bottle, we hadn't realised that there was going to be this sediment. So it did start making the wine a little bit cloudy at that point.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering whether maybe, and certainly if that's the norm, I would perhaps encourage people to consider, strange for a white, but possibly decanting
Definitely.
the Chardonnay before drinking.
Most definitely, and it's not something we shy away from. We write, our back labels are not fluffy stories about rainbows and unicorns. We tell people exactly about a little sentence about the vintage, the blend, and how we make the wine. We literally put word for word how we make each of the wines on the back label, but we always close out with the sentence that the wine may contain a harmless sediment. It's made up of grape material, yeast material, tartaric acid, which is in the grape juice, and it can fall out. We've selected our bottles to have a very sharp punt on them, which will hold on to this sediment a lot more. But they definitely do throw, especially after a few years, a bit of sediment. So decanting, if really clear wines is important for the consumer, and that's up to each individual consumer as well, I'd definitely say you could decant our wines. Our larger format whites, the magnums, they definitely are well beneficial to decant them to get them off that sediment. Generally speaking, if people are pouring by the glass, it's not too bad, but also it depends if the bottle's lying down in the fridge, standing up in the fridge. And I think as people get more used to our wine, we're only in our 6th year, we've only had wine in the market for 3.5, 4 years. They'll begin to understand, followers of the wines, that maybe if you want a nice, super clear bottle, stand it up for a few days, decant it, rinse the bottle out, return it to the bottle. It'll make it clearer, but wines like Chardonnay, especially a Chardonnay like ours, and a more structured, voluminous Chardonnay can really benefit from decanting it. Just like a red, it's not just about the sediment, it's also about introducing a bit of air into the wine, which can really open it up and show so many more characteristics which can be a little bit closed over when it just stays in the bottle.
Interesting. Do you want to make any comment about your connections with the Aboriginal communities up north?
Yeah, I should. I feel like I should probably have my wife here talking about it, but my wife is she's a nurse. She's a pretty high-level emergency nurse. But over the last few years, she's started to get involved with doing some nursing stints with remote Indigenous communities. At present, she's done several in the Northern Territory, and then last year, 2020, we had the opportunity to go up to the very far north of WA to a community called Columbaroo. We have this beautiful space here in Margaret River where we make our wine, but with this wonderful cellar door where it was designed and made to show as well. And we've made the decision a couple of years ago that we're just going to be showing artwork from the communities where my wife Kellie has worked. So the artworks come straight from community. There's generally single community exhibitions, so you get to see representations of artwork from one individual producer. One individual area. And we do it as a non-for-profit exhibition as well. So we cover obviously the cost of making a sale and the art processing, the payment, but we send back the bulk depending on which artist group they come from, because different communities have different art groups and things, but it's normally 70 to 80% of the sale price goes direct to the artist bank account, and then the remaining portion we keep in a fund, and at the end of our season when we close up or we change the exhibition, we put that money to a health and wellness initiative in community, which my wife, being a health professional, works with the communities to work out where that money is going to be best spent. So a little like the wines, we love showing artwork on the walls that we have a strong connection with, my wife in particular, and just like I have a strong connection with the wines. But it's also nice showing something that's got a bit of an altruistic level to it as well, where we're using it, it's making a beautiful decoration of our space and offers something quite unique in the Margaret River area to see some genuine non-souvenir shop Indigenous artworks. But it's also bringing to attention some of the other things and why we're doing this as well, to try and help these communities. It's not just about having like a pretty art space as well, it's got some real meaning and thought behind it too.
Final question. Where do you want to be with where you're headed in 5 years? Any changes down the road, do you think?
I'm not planning for any changes, but if the last 12, 14 months on the planet has taught us anything, it's be ready to change at a moment's notice. I don't think it's any coincidence that our wines that we're making they've been reviewed with very high scores. They've been selling out very fast, and I think that's the proof in the pudding, is that our consumers are coming back year after year. So for me, I actually feel, even though our wines are selling very, very fast and some don't even make it to market, I do feel the pressure as a producer to make sure that the next vintage of each wine is going to deliver to our consumers who are coming back year after year to buy them something as good or hopefully better. So We're at a point now with Mr Barval wines, we're really starting to, we understand our vineyard sites very well. I think we're getting consistently very good quality, and we're really starting to look at just some of the little 1%ers and half percenters and point something of a percenters. So we're not about big change, and not necessarily looking for change, but if we can see ways to improve a wine or improve part of a wine or improve a system or a process that we're doing which will help the wines, then fine-tuning really is what we're looking at doing. We don't have any grand plans of massive increases in production. So I'm sorry for everyone out there if you can't access our wines, but we're not intending on making a whole lot more of them. But just really want to focus on not even expanding the range, but just being able to really focus on getting the absolute most out of each block we've got, and hopefully just incrementally, particularly in our Cabernets and Chardonnays, which are, for me, are our most important wines for Mr Barval, getting them to a level that is going to continue on what we've started doing in our first 5 years, but hopefully sort of advancing it and making them sort of push into being seen amongst the other great fine wines of Margaret River as well.
Fantastic. Well, Rob, it's been an absolute delight to be here with you today, and also past visits and taking lots of photos and access to the winery, which very grateful for, so thank you for that. I really look forward to maintaining an ongoing relationship with you over the years and see you go on from success to success with your wines. So fantastic, thank you.
Thanks very much, Trevor. And yeah, we'll see where we go. We'll have to try a few more wines in a few years, maybe when I've got a few more grey hairs.
Okay, all right. Cheers, Rob. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I don't think it's necessarily coincidence that the wines we're making have been started off being, I don't think it's a coincidence that our wines have started off being seen as